So welcome everyone. We got a sense from the people who have expressed interest in this that they've got a strong interest in either hiring of grads, early career development of grads, apprentices, that kind of thing. And so in some senses, this is quite a specialist group, I think. And so is this coaching. I mean, I don't know if we are, I'm not sure if we are literally the first company to offer coaching at this this way, because it is a very specialist area. And so, you know, we're quite excited. And the background to this is that Tilly and I met probably 2 or 3 years ago now, early in her coaching career. And I was just forming the Leadenhall, well, I'd formed the Leadenhall business some time ago, but our branding was very much coaching at more senior levels and that kind of stuff. And so we kept in touch, and Tilly has developed her own offering around, I remember her saying that she had an ambition to form a form of coaching and a program for coaching people in early careers. And I kind of said, well, good luck with that. Let's see how it goes. And she's been really enjoying doing that. And she's come back and said, well, look, now that you've got Coaching on Demand, you've got a broader platform. Is there any chance we can work together and see if there's a broader market for this? And so that's what has prompted us to work with Tilly and develop the program based on her existing work. So that's kind of the background. So Tilly, do you want to just a quick introduction to yourself? You're going to talk a bit more about yourself, obviously, within the presentation, but I don't know if you just want to say a quick word.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So Chris and I met a couple of years ago and had conversations around working specifically at this level. And I've come back around to talking to each other about working together at the moment. And I've been specializing in this area for the last 4 years or so after doing a master's. And yeah, this is an area that I feel particularly passionate about. And I think, like Chris said, it's largely on time. So that's why we're particularly excited about working together at the moment.
Cool. And I'm also going to introduce Samir. Samir has been working with us for nearly 18 months now, and is responsible or leads our client services on our platform. So Samir, I don't know if you just want to say a few words.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to meet you. As Chris mentioned, I help run the Coaching on Demand platform, which is our cloud-based platform for coaching. I'm also very excited to be part of this conversation, as I'm someone who graduated nearly over 2 years ago. So I'm very keen and interested to know how companies are responding to the needs of graduates and employees in their early careers and how they're supporting them.
Cool. So you've got a double interest.
Yeah.
Okay, so look, I'm going to get the presentation up. And so let me just get this up. I'm not. So hopefully everyone on the call can see the PowerPoint. I'm trying not to do death by PowerPoint, but there is some information to be conveyed, and hopefully you can see some faces at the top of your screen so that we're not totally buried. So we've done the introductions. I'm not going to go around the room because we have got very limited time, but my sense is that most people here have got either an HR, leadership, learning, development background, or have a specialism on early careers. I'm going to quickly cover who Leadenhall are and this platform that we have, Coaching on Demand. And then we're going to talk about early careers coaching and Tilly, and then we're going to have an overview of the program itself. Leadenhall, my background, I'm a former HR person. I spent 28 years in HR in 6 industries in different types of companies. I did lead HR at Fidelity International, Colt Telecom, and Aspen Insurance. So there is, by and large, a kind of strong financial services background, a bit of telecoms there. And I used to work in industry, in various industries, and I've worked in the public sector too. So we've been going 12, nearly 13 years. We specialize in a broader leadership type coaching, but we do team coaching, parental transition, diversity and careers coaching, and early careers coaching will be a specialism for us, and which is why Tilly's leading it, because it's her area of specialism. We developed Coaching on Demand, our platform, back in late 2019, and clearly coaching platforms have become all the rage. We're an international coaching practice that has a platform. We're not a platform provider. So we're not trying to be a better up or a coach hub. We're not trying to do cheap coaching on the side. What we're trying to do is deliver coaching to different people. Now, we've got about 70 coaches from the US through UK, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Those coaches are very experienced coaches by and large, and they're all qualified. And one or two of them have expressed interest in, or a few of them have expressed interest in backing up Tilly and supporting her on this program. But our emphasis is on the quality of the coaching. So the coaches that we have doing general coaching are still the same coaches you'll see on the platform. What we're not trying to do is to have a race to the bottom with some kind of commoditized coaching platform. So that's our pitch on that. Coaching, I can show you or do a demonstration of coaching on demand for another day, but very happy to spend 20 minutes showing you exactly how it works. But you go into the platform, you can see the coaches, you can book your meeting with your preferred coach, you get a choice, and there are resources available there. The coaching itself is done through the platform, through Zoom, and after the sessions, you can give feedback to the coach via the platform. If you're a client, you can see all the coaching activity. You can also get feedback on the coaches statistically, and you can see some of the themes that people have been coached on. So there is a client area, but the coachees use the platform to get their coaching done, which is ideal for this type of coaching, because wherever the coachee is, they can log in and have their coaching. So I'm going to hand over to Tilly and ask her to take it from here.
Perfect, thanks, Chris. So yeah, as I said, I am specialising in coaching at this early career talent level. And the reason I guess started to get interested in this level was the position between university and work. So I found it very, very difficult. I felt like all through school and university, there was a lot of support that was always offered. And, obviously always building everyone up, saying you can do anything you want, you become anything that you want to be. And then suddenly you get into the world of work and it felt like there was this real drop off of support. And so it's something that I really struggled with. And I noticed with my friends and my peers that they were really struggling with similar sorts of worries. And I think at the time, people kind of left it to the point where then they were thinking about wanting to assume that was the right practice to be offering to people. But as I found this master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology, and the topics that I was learning about, I felt like those topics would be really helpful to have conversations around within the context of work. So those things were happening at the same time, and that's how the ideas came together, really. So I'm accredited by the EMCC, and I've got over 400 hours of coaching. Chris, can you click through to the next slide? Thank you. So I did my master's on an exploration of the transition from university to work. I interviewed a group of people, and the theory that combined with the findings that I had was really, really interesting. So it talked about this stage being a particularly complex transition, specifically looking at this idea of the quarter life crisis. So if you think about how from school and university, your kind of early 20s, you go from your friends being the absolute nucleus of your world, and everything revolves around your friends. And then gradually people at their own time seem to allow their work to take on more meaning. And so that can be quite difficult if, for example, you're someone who goes through that transition a little bit, care more about your work and you're more interested and you're feeling more motivated, and perhaps your friends are still going out and going to the pub every evening, going drinking, and you're actually suddenly feeling like I'm moving in a different direction. And the same can be true of the reverse. So it's a difficult transition, and it's something that people go through at their own pace. And then I guess aligned with that is this idea of comparing ourselves to others. So thinking about, I remember really clearly when everyone came to London and got their first jobs and sitting around with everyone, and everyone was talking about what their companies were doing rather than necessarily what they were doing with their jobs. And it became a little bit competitive almost. And even though I think there can be an element of a bit of healthy competition to keep everyone going, I think it can also really make people go inwardly and actually become quite quiet if they're feeling a bit unsure of themselves or they're lacking in a bit of confidence. And so again, there wasn't that support of someone to go to be able to air these worries. It always felt like you're just going through that by yourself. So the topics that emerged from the data were this idea of uncertainty around change, imposter syndrome, self-esteem, the importance of being settled, career ambition, the importance of a role model, work well, growth and development. So these are the findings which have basically provided the kind of bones or the structure of the program. And the idea is that hopefully these ideas will be universal for people to talk about at this level. And even if they're not, then just the idea of being able to voice what those topics are should hopefully give people a bit of a clearer idea in terms of what topics could be that they might like to explore. Can we click through to the next slide, please, Chris? Thank you. So my approach with coaching, I guess, is this idea of it's not just coaching for everyone, but it's actually about this specialist understanding. So the first session is always used to build trust and rapport. And I think sometimes coaches can be a little bit nervous. They're not really sure what to expect. They probably haven't had coaching previously. So often they're not really sure what they're getting themselves into. So it's really important that we have that time to get to know one another and run through what the program is. So in doing so, then it's part of creating this psychologically safe environment. So setting the parameters of the coaching relationship so that we're both on the same page and we know what's expected of one another. And I always make sure to put a real emphasis on there being no wrong answers, because I think this is something that people struggle with, is they don't want to ask stupid questions. This is what they would perceive to be a mistake. So I always say, this is what this space is for. It's to be able to speak freely. It's okay if you say something and then 10 seconds later you change your mind. It's all about understanding ourselves, and that takes time to figure that out as we're going. So there's an emphasis on enhancing our own self-awareness. So rather than operating on automatic pilot, we're thinking about how we can encourage coaches to take a step back to observe what's going on and be more intentional and deliberate with the actions that we're taking and the thoughts that we're investing in. So rather than being so consumed by what's going on as it's happening, it's that ability to take a couple of seconds to actually see what's happening or intentional of how they're responding. And then this idea of growth mindset is what is consistent throughout the program, and thinking about a longer term perspective. So where growth and development is prioritized based on this understanding that our personality traits can be developed. Can we click through, please, Chris? Thank you. So in terms of the relationship with the client, this is definitely not the kind of situation where we just say, okay, let's start the program and then we'll meet with you guys in a year and see if you want to continue. The idea with this is that there's an ongoing relationship with the client. So that's a really important part of it. We want it to be something where from the findings that we're getting. So in terms of confidentiality, how I've done this previously is to agree with both the client and each coachee that sessions are confidential, but I feed back themes to the client. So if something appears with more than one person, then I have a feedback call with them, and we do at the end of each cohort, and we go through themes that have appeared. So it's never meant to be specific to one person. It's meant to be what's relevant for the client to know at this level. And it's always solutions focused. I think that's a really important part. I want the client to feel that they've got something to take away from just be complaining about things. It's meant to be, well, how can we move things forward? So it's really the ongoing nature, which I think is a really important part of what we're doing, or aiming to do with this program. So yes, and then if we can click through to the next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of an overview of the program, so the emphasis is really on the self. This program is all about the individual. And like I said, adopting a growth mindset, increasing their self-awareness, encouraging awareness in the present rather than retrospectively, and building confidence and building a sense of self or a sense of identity. This idea of there's a lot of reflection that we already are perhaps encouraged to do, if that's through school, university or work, always thinking, you know, how do you feel this project went, or how did that exam go? It's always looking back after the situation's already happened. So that ability to actually think in the moment, how do I want to react in this situation? That's something which has to be built up like any other strength, as you would in the gym or any behavior that you're looking to implement. So thinking about how we can encourage that. And again, rather than allowing other people to form your sense of self, your sense of identity through feedback. So for example, together, it's important that we actually take the time to decide for ourselves who we feel that we are or who we'd like to be, and then use that to build a sense of confidence and a strong foundation, so that as we receive feedback from the people around us, we can take the bits that are helpful rather than feeling like we open ourselves up totally to the feedback that they have, because of course that's good when things are going well. But if things are going bad, then that negative criticism or that negative feedback can feel really overwhelming for people, and then can actually make them feel so afraid of feedback that they just kind of withdraw altogether. So it's just about coaching setting to think about exploring those ideas. So a lot of it is just brainstorming and figuring out what that might be, figuring out what feels good to talk about, perhaps letting go of some previous parts of their identity that they had through school, for example, ones that they feel no longer accurate, or an accurate representation of how they see themselves, and just having a bit of a reset and thinking, okay, what do I want to be all about now? So there are several objectives that we have for the program. So for example, introducing positive psychology by talking to coachees about how they can learn about and take responsibility for their own well-being in coaching program. But psychological well-being is a big part of positive psychology, and I think that's what underpins a lot of the theory that we're talking about. So it's just about making sure that as people are setting goals throughout the program, that we're also aware of what's happening to them on a well-being side, just to be aware of it and to make sure that those things are aligned, and an opportunity again to add those things. So some people might feel that they're feeling really confident, and so for them the program is about accelerating their development, whereas other people might feel that they're going through a bit of a low patch, or they're feeling a little bit anxious, and so we're thinking about how we can move them across that scale to a better, and then again across to the more positive side of things. Second objective is around increasing self-awareness, so introducing emotions to the workplace and awareness around mindset. So thinking about how the way that we think about situations has an impact on the way that we feel, so the emotions that we feel, and also the consequences that can happen as a result of that. So an example would be if I have a limiting belief, which might be that I don't like giving presentations because I don't like not having the answers to people's questions. The emotions associated with that could be fear, anxiety, dread, don't put myself forward for those new opportunities. And so my progression kind of grinds to a halt, and I don't have the opportunity to work with new people. Whereas if I flip that into a growth mindset statement, it could be, I can grow in confidence in this area. It's okay not to have the answers to people's questions, and I can go back to them at a later date. And then the emotions might be more relaxed, calm, confident, and the consequences might be that I put myself forward for different opportunities, and I'm able to work with new people, and then I am on people's radar when promotion opportunities come about. So it's all about increasing our awareness to how the way we feel, and then what can happen as a result of that. And then another objective is about enhancing working relationships. So building confidence in people's communication style and understanding theory around ego state. So how we have our parent, child, and adult ego state. And I think especially when people are at the most junior end of organizations, they can fall into a bit of a trap of adopting their child ego state, or perhaps be triggered into using their child ego state if they feel that their manager or someone more senior is using their parent ego state. So again, it's about how we can become aware of these things so that we can be more intentional with using adults. And then another objective is about increasing engagement, so highlighting strengths and making the company values digestible on a personal level. So as company values are always simplified and reduced into something easy for everyone to remember, that's a great side of it, but it's also important to think, like, what does that mean on an individual basis? So it's an opportunity to open up those conversations and for people to think to themselves, what does this mean to me? How do I see myself in this? And how can I build out this idea of my own personal brand to feel somewhat one that I feel comfortable with, and then to be able to express that outwardly to the world. And another objective is about coping better with stress. So understanding that the perception and interpretation of stresses and our resources is what influences how stressed we feel. So that idea, we're not thinking about stress at the point where we're so overwhelmed and we need to start handing bits of work off. We're thinking about the journey towards that point. So being able to acknowledge what our stresses are, what our coping mechanisms are, so we don't get to this point when we just suddenly feel completely overwhelmed. And then the final objective is about feeling optimistic about career development. So identifying what's meaningful to coachees and then use great ideas into a development plan. So the reason that this session normally comes towards the end of the program is because we use the beginning of the program to build up people's confidence. So by the time we get to the final session and they're more confident in being able to look to the future, practice using visualization to imagine what might be there. And this can sometimes be quite daunting for people who are at the beginning of their career, where they've spent so long focusing on exams in school and university and just getting onto a graduate scheme and getting into the world of work. And then suddenly they get there and it's like, it can be quite overwhelming for my aiming for. So it's just about building that confidence so that people are able to have those conversations. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide then, please, Chris. Perfect. So just before we get into questions, I just wanted to run through a bit of feedback that I've had on the program so far from people who have gone through it. So what people have expressed is that there's a real opportunity to talk about topics that haven't yet been explored or covered. Also, I think people at this junior level have a real, like what I've noticed on the whole is that people have a real interest in learning about themselves, and they really care what we cover and to see how that relates to them. And they feel there's a real sense of movement beyond the point from which they started in the first session. So that's another really important point of it, how that continuity and consistency of conversations can allow them to accelerate their development rather than just kind of floating through and taking things as they're coming. And then also growth mindset is a concept that people are really easily able to get on board with, and it's something that they can recognize in themselves, recognize when they're falling into traps of a fixed mindset. And then possibly most important is that there's this continued application of learning from our conversations beyond the session. You could have 6 amazing sessions with really insightful conversations, but if they're not putting the work into practice in between sessions, then the changes aren't really being made. So this is a really important part, which I'm pleased is working well at the moment, whereby I always ask coaches to set themselves goals, to implement the learning. So making sure that they're keeping the key parts of what we've talked about at the forefront of their mind without having to go through, extensive pages of notes. It's about making sure that it's something that they can integrate into what they're doing. So it shouldn't feel like adding hours and hours of work to their already very busy days. It should changes in the way they're thinking rather than necessarily anything more extensive than that. So yeah, thanks, Chris.
Right, obviously we're gonna open up now for a bit more conversation. So the one thing I would say, look, I used to be responsible for graduate hiring programs and development programs. I've hired masters people from MBAs from Chicago and from INSEAD and all the rest of it. But people like me are not coaching on the program, right? I think the transactional analysis is quite interesting. There is a danger that I look like somebody's dad, and even if I am a good coach, I think I might not be the right person for this kind of program. So we are keen to get the right coaches on the program and people who can relate to the people being coached. And Tilly's given you the top of the program. Behind the slide today, there's a lot of detail, and it's not too programmatic. Clearly, like any coaching, the coaching goes where the coaching goes. But there's some real thought being applied to each of the 6 sessions that people get through the program. So opening up, my sense is that we've got lots of people here with lots of experience of working with early careers people, whether it be graduates, apprentices, other people who are beginning their careers. Thoughts, any comments or observations or questions?
I can start. Hi there. I'm Zoe. I work at a company called Bridgepoint, so private equity. We kind of don't have necessarily grads. We have starting at a kind of an analyst associate level. Now they've had prior work experience. What does that mean is this particularly pitched at the transition from school to working place?
No, definitely not. So thank you for your question. But at the moment, I've done this with people who are postgrads as well. So they come off the graduate scheme, and some of those people go and do work before they even come to the graduate scheme itself. So some of them have experience of the workplace. And generally, I think with these topics, they are like universally relevant to talk about. But if they bring their own topics, like I said, if they would prefer to do so. But I think with this program, it's more about this early careers level. So it's not just for graduates. It's, oh, sorry, Orla, would you mind just popping yourself on mute?
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, it's not just about graduates. It's just more about the early career phase in general. So yeah, I would say it's able to be flexible in that sense.
Thank you.
I think the other thing I would add.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I know. I just noticed that. I've been trying to mute because I have a dog. If he comes past, I'll grab him and show you, because everyone will go, "Isn't he cute?" and it will go down well. But we are. I mean, I used to run the graduate and analyst and associate programs at Fidelity, and I'm very familiar with the kind of people you're talking about. If you were to come to us and say, "I've got this group of people," I would work with Tilly and with some of our coaches who have got extensive wealth management kind of backgrounds and analyst backgrounds, and we'd make sure we can tailor it a bit for your kind of audience. So, you know, that would be meat and drink for us. Any other observations or thoughts?
Just on that point, Chris, I was just going to say, you know, if, for example, in that instance, we did like a pilot scheme with like a first group of them, and then the feedback from that was that everyone was talking about one area of a topic that perhaps might be more relevant to them, then of course we can be flexible in making sure that we make those edits to the program within each organization so that it evolves and it becomes more personalized to them and what they're experiencing and what their pain points are as well. So it can be always changing and evolving as we're going, for sure.
Thank you.
How long do you plan to have a program like this?
So generally I run the sessions fortnightly, and that's, so I think sometimes monthly, that's more typical of the more senior level. I think for people who are more junior, it seems like there's a lot more happening in a shorter space of time. So generally fortnightly sessions. Of course, there's flexibility within that. We can decide within which time frame you'd like all the sessions to be completed by. So for example, we could say all sessions months, but aim for fortnightly. And of course, over the summer as well, generally, if people are going away, then sometimes they have three weeks between sessions because of annual leave and that sort of thing. But yeah, generally 6 sessions fortnightly.
Ah, 6 sessions. I missed that bit. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, 6 sessions fortnightly.
Just coming off that point, I was wondering what the time commitment looks like. And also a point around kind of evaluation and measurement as well.
So in terms of time commitment, so they're hour-long sessions. So it's 6 hours to commit over a 3-month period. In terms of feedback, that might be a question better for Chris related to coaching on demand. How I've done it so far is just by asking for feedback or sending like questionnaires, but it's more qualitative data that I've been gathering as opposed to quantitative. But of course, if as an organization you'd prefer to get more quantitative data, then we can help think about what kind of things you'd like to be measuring people against and track things like that as well.
Yeah, the way we work with clients with coaching on demand is that, first of all, after every session, the coach is asked to complete a short questionnaire. I mean, literally, there are 4 statements, and so the coaches all end up with a score, which you as a client can see. You can also see the score for every meeting. The coach actually gets the detailed feedback. The client doesn't get the detailed feedback, the coach does. But there is a way of measuring how each session went. And so you'll be able to see when the coaching took place, what the score was, if they've completed the feedback. Feedback's running at about 40% with most of our clients. So people are not religious in filling out their feedback, but at least we'll have data. We then meet with clients, and we would normally meet with a client, depending on the program, every 6 weeks, just to make sure it's going well, to make sure that everything's happening. Myself and Samir often meet with clients just to go through it. In this case, it would be with Tilly involved, just to see how it's going. Is everyone using the coaching? Are you getting feedback? That kind of stuff. At the very end, we do thematic coaching reviews. And what we do is we go to the coaches and say, okay, what have you learned from the program that the company ought to know without breaking any confidentialities? And I think for this kind of program, that would be incredibly valuable, because you'll start to get some kind of theme. So if you've got 10 people being coached, from your latest intake, you'd be able to then get some themes that say, actually, most of the coachees are finding this environment very tough, or most of the coachees are finding this environment really supportive, etc. So we'll be able to give you some sense of how it's going. So there's a real value in having that kind of dialogue. We call it a thematic review, and we do that at the end once the program's completed.
Hi.
Thank you, that's helpful.
This might be a organization preference, but how do you envision it working in terms of the graduates? So would you say you encourage everyone to attend, or would it be kind of optional? Do you foresee it being kind of, you put this option out there and people log in, or would you foresee this to be everyone kind of being involved?
Yeah, we've as a company, we work with a lot because we've been doing this for 3 years now. We've found clients use coaching on demand in different ways. We have one insurance company where everyone is offered coaching on a voluntary basis. So last year they had 108 people, 68 people took up the coaching, and that's kind of all employee coaching. The other way clients use us is for developmental coaching, and I would see this as developmental coaching. And so, for example, we'll have a high potential program or a leadership development program, and you say to somebody, you have been picked out, you have been selected, we are investing in your development, this is your program, and this is how it works. And I would suggest that if you have an intake of people joining, I think this is the kind of program where you'll get more reward and commitment if you say, we provide this to you to enable you to orientate yourself into the world of work and into our business, and you're being given 6 sessions, we would expect you to take part in this. Now, that might not fit with your culture or your business. What we do find is that with the more voluntary type coaching, it's a very different prospect because people bring to coaching whatever they want. Whereas if it's programmatic, we're delivering, a bit like a training program, we're delivering a series of conversations that are part of their development. So I'd be more in favor of the, if you join us, we give you a coach for the first 3 months to 4 months, and you'll find that helpful. Now, if there's a conscientious objector who says, I don't want to be coached, then that's fine. But I think this is a more proactive one than that. What would your reaction be to that, Elena?
I thought that might be what you said. I thought that was going to be what you suggested. And so that was my thought, but I don't want to kind of push it. Coaching is a difficult thing, but because it's a kind of a different kind of coaching, as you said, it's a developmental program rather than you have a specific subject you want to talk about, volunteering into coaching. So there'd be something I had to think about, I think.
And at what point do you oh, sorry.
So I was going to say, just adding to that point, Elena, I think, again, because coaching is generally pretty new to people at this level, often there can be almost like, as go as far as saying, a bit of fear in terms of not knowing what's expected of them. So I think it depends. I think their reaction to being offered coaching depends heavily on how the coaching is put across to them. So if, for example, hypothetically, it's coming across as like, we think you're doing something wrong, so that's why you're being prescribed coaching, of course, that's going to feel different to if people are saying, we're really excited to be able to offer this opportunity, that you might need in terms of if it's a kind of overall PDF to send to people, even like introductory video, a couple of minutes to explain what the program's about, so that they can watch it and know, okay, this is what it's all about, this is what I'm preparing myself for. Of course, it's still important that people feel that they are choosing to take part in it. It shouldn't feel forced, otherwise that's going to impact what if they get anything at all out of the program. But I think it depends a lot on how the program is put across them in terms of how they receive it.
But a follow-up question on that. Would you have capacity? We have 50 grads, and things like that. So you'd have the capacity for them all to be coached at the same time, the same period, etc.
Yeah, we've got over 300 people on the platform at the moment, and so we would make sure we have enough coaches and choice to enable that to be delivered.
At what point do you recommend they start? I mean, there's quite a lot to get used to in an organisation when people first join, whether you're straight out of uni or you've done another job, particularly the early years, you're not used to moving jobs and trying to find you talk about them finding their own identity, but also they've also got to figure out a bit about the company and what that's like not to work out how they fit in, because you'd hope they bring their whole self to work and that works. But where do you recommend, wrong question to say, when do you recommend one would start this program in relation to somebody joining an organisation?
Yeah, my experience of this has been that it's been tested across different points. So of people kind of either coming to the end of the graduate thing in their first like proper role or their first official post. I think at any point, honestly, any point within that is helpful. I think it might be in terms, yeah, I guess at any point really. I would say maybe not for the first few months, so that bit where people are finding their feet, and it can be like there's a lot of information, but that might be also worth considering in terms of what that planning looks like from your side of things. So how much training and introductory stuff there is going on from your side of things, and then just to decide kind of mutually where you think there would be a good point for us to become involved, you know. So rather hard line in it now, it's more about between us and you to decide a point where you think, okay, also going on past experience, where do we think they would be most well suited. But from my own experience, anywhere between, like, from what I've done as kind of people on the graduate scheme up to a year off the graduate scheme is where people have been offered it and benefited from it, definitely.
And I think we can bespoke this, right? We'd rather have a conversation with you about your circumstances than say, here's the answer. But clearly, and even I can remember back to my first day at work. I'm not sure I'd be ready for coaching in the first first couple of weeks of joining an organisation. But we'd work with you to find the right timing for that. Okay. Any other questions? No, I think we aimed at 45 minutes. I think we've actually managed to get the timing about right. So I hope you found it interesting. We're obviously going to share the deck with everybody, so we'll get that out to you. We'll also take the recording and make sure that that everyone gets a chance to see the recording again. And those who couldn't make it will get their we'll be able to watch what we've just been through. Okay, thank you for coming along. Much appreciated.